If you are enjoying this podcast and other podcasts on the Dragon Wagon Radio Network, be sure to check out the Dragon Wagon Shop. Awesome t-shirts and mugs from your favorite shows so you can tout your podcast pride all while supporting your favorite podcast network. And make sure to check it often for new items and limited time designs. Shop now at dragonwagonradio.com/shop and get your dragon swag on.
We didn't really have a plan, did we?
I don't think we have a plan now.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. When we first sat down, it was like, what do we call it? I don't know if I came up with it or you came up with it.
No, it was definitely you. I'm not taking ownership over this title.
Because it's not even like grammatically correct, is it? I think there's been a few people that say it's supposed to be to hell with this.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Or to hell with it. But I don't know, whatever. To hell with this. Kind of makes perfect sense to me.
Close enough.
It's close enough.
We can just say the copyright was taken on the other pronunciation of this phrase.
It gets the point across.
Across? Well, it's been over a year since we did this last for Booksmart. That was September 11th, I remember, because we were like, oh shit.
Oh, wow.
Why did we choose September 11th?
That's true. That's right. I forgot that was our 9/11 episode.
Yeah.
But I didn't release it until I was in London, and I released like 3 episodes back to back to back.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So like everything we recorded, and because those 3 were done almost like a month apart each anyway.
It made no difference.
But I released them like once every 2 weeks while I was out there. Because I was like, and then I came back and I was like, we're going to have all these episodes, and look at us now. It's 9 months later.
Yeah. Well, that's how busy we've been. You have moved to a terrible location for me. I'm never going to see you aside from podcasting now.
I know. I'm the furthest from Hollywood Central than I've been.
Ever been since Colorado.
Well, actually, no, that's not true. The first place I moved was San Clemente, and that was really far away. But yeah, as far as LA is concerned, I'm essentially a half an hour extra out of the circle.
Right.
Which for me, actually, it takes me the same amount of time to get to downtown LA as it did before. Because if you just
many more miles, but yeah, the traffic isn't quite so bad.
Yeah, Pasadena just does like a straight shot into downtown.
Yeah,
but like Santa Monica or any of that, it's like a nightmare. The Valley is like a half hour, like because you're a half hour away now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I started the trend when I moved to Van Nuys from North Hollywood. That was still the Valley, but it seemed like a humongous move at the time.
Still the Valley? I mean, Van Nuys is like the Valley.
Yeah, it's like Valley Central. That's actually East Valley. We are out of the Valley. Yeah.
Why is it East Valley? It's in the central and it goes like northwest.
Because there's more
northeast.
There's more to the west, I guess, than in a technical sense.
Okay.
The animal shelter that's like 2 blocks from my house is called the East Valley Animal Shelter.
I mean, I guess the north end of it stretches to the mountains, which is kind of on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like, I consider East Valley like Sun Valley and Burbank. Not Van Nuys, which is dead in the center.
That's Easter Valley.
Great.
Even more east.
So bunny rabbits are running through the hills, handing out candy to children.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's been a long time. There have been some major changes in all of our lives.
And yet this is still our, 83rd or 84th episode or something crazy?
I don't know.
I don't know how we ever got that high when we haven't really, at least for the last 5 years, we've never been that consistent with this. Hopefully, now that we're both unemployed.
Yeah, unemployment.
Hopefully we can actually get some done and create some consistency again. Not that anyone cares, but it's fun for us.
I'm sure there's somebody who's out jogging in the morning and it'll show up in their podcast feed because they subscribed 3 years ago and they forgot we existed.
Holy shit. But I don't even know if that's going to work anymore because Apple like changed their policies and stuff.
Of course they did. How would this affect us?
I don't know. I was really busy when I got their email that said something about you need to sign in and do something with your subscription,
and you just went, "Oh, this is so boring."
I was like, I can never remember my password. Which, to be honest, like uploading this to Libsyn or whatever hosts our podcast, before Dragon Wagon, which is that a thing anymore? Is our host actually still around?
Yeah, for sure. They have like other movie podcasts. We're not even the movie podcast.
I don't see
on the network.
Jake post anything anymore.
I do all the time. Well, clearly I'm spending too much time on social media.
Apparently, I'm spending less and less.
Yeah, you're trying to be healthy about it. There's all kinds of stuff out there.
What have you been up to for the past year?
Mostly work, and then some more work.
Anything you can talk about?
I guess I should say what this pilot was that I worked on, because it didn't get picked up. It was for Warner Brothers and CBS, like Warner Brothers producing, CBS would have distributed. So the process of that was they go and shoot the thing, and we have to satisfy the studio who is making the thing first, and then we show it to the network, and they go, can we air this or not? And they decided not. But then once CBS passed on it, they kept working on it to try and get Warner Brothers to pick it up, maybe for HBO Max or whatever other networks they
one
own.
Of the 1,900,000 streaming services.
I mean, the name of the show was in the trades, so it's not like a big secret. I won't tell any stories from behind the scenes because I don't have that many. But the show was called Rust Belt News. It was from one of the producers who's been on The Simpsons for a long time. And too bad it didn't get picked up. I thought it had potential. Yeah. And but like a pilot, TV pilots are notoriously hard to do. They will work you to death. And maybe some people are like, what? 75 hours a week is like a normal week for me. It's not for me.
Wait.
So I totally got...
Who's saying 75 hours a week is normal? Like people in the film industry or?
Yeah, some people in the film industry.
I don't know any other industry where that's normal, really.
The video game industry or even some VFX people are like, oh yeah, when it's deadline time, we can't leave the office.
Yeah. I definitely have stories. But finish what else you did.
I just wrapped up work on a new Netflix show called The Night Agent. I believe that's coming out.
I feel like I've heard of that one.
Maybe because I told you about it?
Maybe.
It's also in the trades. You can go to Deadline and read about The Night Agent. It's based on a book. But that's for Netflix. Was this an
entire series or was this
a whole season? Yeah. Not a pilot. And before this pilot, I was working on Bel Air for Peacock.
Yeah.
I cut an episode of Bel Air.
Congratulations. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I only have a couple of these.
And you got lead editor credit on it and everything? Or
shared editing.
Shared, okay.
Co-editing, but it counts.
Yeah, it does count.
It's not like... I didn't get stuck on the back of the end of the credits with additional editor, so that would still count.
But I remember you saying something like, because I know a few other people have had a similar thing where they finally were given the opportunity just because either the main editor was so busy that they couldn't handle all of it, and they basically just say, hey, Mark, why don't you cut part of this episode?
Yeah, I don't want to phrase it in my case like the editor couldn't handle it.
Sure.
But it was a busy time. We were really busy with addressing notes on another episode, and then, hey, we got dailies for the next one. The TV schedule don't stop for you, man. So the editor suggested, he asked the producers, like, is it cool if Mark helps out? He's been champing at the bit to edit, so let's let him do it. And everybody was on board. Yeah. And it happened. And
it's great when that happens, right? When you've got an editor who's supportive and like wants to see you grow as well. And it's like it's not like they're like
he's great.
It's not like they don't have enough time, for what they're doing.
Right.
It's like usually they're so busy they can't, or just they they don't need to kill themselves and work 75 hours a week.
Exactly. I really enjoy working for people who are not working from the ass crack of dawn until, the midnight.
There's a lot
burning
of
the midnight oil.
I know a few.
Because it's a TV show or it's a movie, and there's a lot of money involved, and people feel the pressure. But remember, it's only a TV show or a movie. It is not heart surgery. We are not saving lives in most cases. We're making entertainment, guys. Let's calm down.
Yeah.
But I haven't worked with many people like that. And here's a detailed list of all those assholes I've ever...
Here's my blacklist.
But yeah, it's just been this whole period of pandemic times. I really haven't had that much time off in between jobs. Yeah. I seem to jump from one to the next. Friday one ends, Monday the next one's coming up.
I was gonna say this seems like a pretty rare thing where we're both not working for once.
Right? Are you looking right now?
No, yes.
Or are you just kind of like,
no?
You got a new house, you want to deal with some stuff here first?
I just got back from the crazy long 4.5 week trip.
That was like 2 trips. You came
everywhere.
back.
Yeah,
you saw Nine Inch Nails in Colorado.
It started with going to a wedding in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Liverpool and went to a wedding there. Hung out with one of our listeners, Mackie, and then jumped on a flight down to Spain and hung out with the in-laws for a week. And then Orla and I went to Barcelona, stayed there for a few nights, which was amazing. That city is awesome.
You were saying on Facebook, like, it's your favorite city in the world, and you want to live there now.
Well, I mean, it's just I didn't expect when I I don't know, when I think of Barcelona before, I used to just...
I think you mean Barcelona.
Barcelona. But there's like the Gothic Quarter is like just such a unique, kind of like endless sprawl of super narrow streets that basically just feel like alleyways, and that's all there is. And so every intersection is just this tiny little thing, but you've got these bars and stuff that are in there that are just really cool.
You're not worried about getting Jack the Rippered? Well, maybe because you're not a Victorian prostitute.
I'm not, well, that didn't happen in Barcelona, first of all.
It could be the Barcelona Jack the Ripper.
When we left, like, Orla's like, check this out. And she showed me a video of some UK tourist getting stabbed while his bag got taken. And he chased the guy, and the guy turned around and was like knifing him a bunch. And it's like,
wow.
I mean, the guy lived, but it was just like, oh yeah, that can happen. And
it can happen anywhere. It can happen on
she
Venice
was a little
Beach.
paranoid about it happening, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But we flew back to Colorado. I had Nine Inch Nails tickets way before any of this trip was planned. So
you had to.
I was like, oh God, I completely forgot I went to New York before the wedding because I was doing some scouting for Black Flower, which was written for Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
But after some thinking, like, I decided to shift it for financial reasons. It's cheaper to shoot in New York.
Really?
Well,
you're a
it's
class
not necessarily
trader. You're nothing but a dirty rat. You're just doing this for money, for tax breaks.
It was also because, it's like my family's cabin is what the film was written for.
Yes.
But, on the off chance, and I'm not saying this would happen, but if the movie was successful, you end up promoting, like your cabin that's like on, private land and stuff like that. And all the family politics that went into that, I didn't want to have to deal with.
You would be afraid of people stopping for pictures at the cabin from Black Flower.
I don't care. My family cares. My family is the one. I get it. It's like it's the only town in Colorado. I think the only town in Colorado where the population's like actually kind of gone down. It's still like the exact same like non-village like main street.
So that's a tricky situation. If you were going to go to them to raise money in an independent film fashion, you have to convince them that it's good enough that it'll make their money back, but not good enough that it'll attract rabid fans that will fuck up their property.
Right. Well, yeah, and at that point, I'm like, why am I even making this movie? But it's a number of things. Colorado, it's got kind of like it's such a small production base of people, and when I left in 2003, the production base, the quality of the crews were not great in Colorado. Like there just wasn't enough. Most of the people who were working in the industry moved out. They moved to LA or New York.
Now, even with
New Mexico,
something like the Sundance Institute is there, right?
That's Utah, but
close enough.
Other side of the Rocky Mountains. Yeah, it's only a 6-hour drive. No big deal. It's it's hard to make a movie when you can't find a focus puller who can nail the mark like all the time while you're shooting in the snow. And it's not to say that you couldn't find those people in Colorado. It's just that there's far more of them that I've worked with in New York. Mm-hmm. It's because there's a lot of crew members from Mr. Robot that have reached out and said, hey, I want to help. So it's like,
Well, now I'm reaching back 25 or 30 years here, but Fargo and A Simple Plan, those were made in the Midwest in very snowy conditions.
Yeah.
In fact, Sam Raimi and the Coen brothers, they're friends, and the Coens convinced or maybe gave some pointers to Sam Raimi on how to do it because they'd been through all that snowy crap with Fargo. Don't make the same mistakes. So, I mean, these movies do get made. I don't know anything about those productions. Maybe all the crews came in from out of state. Yeah. But don't they usually say, don't do that? You have to use local hires?
Well, if you want any tax incentives, you have to. I think they usually put like a cap on. You have to, 80% of your workforce has to be local. That kind of thing. But Colorado doesn't really have big incentives to shoot there. Whereas like New York will give you like a huge tax credit on your post-production expenditure. So if you do post there, they'll actually, give you a certain amount of the budget back.
That's funny. One of the weird oddities about the Editors Guild is that we're kind of two different guilds stuck together.
New York, any New York positions, we can't do work from home from California. It has to be a New York local. Mm-hmm. And I think that, maybe I'm getting my history wrong, but I think that was sort of like the heyday of New York filmmaking, 60s, 70s, whatever. That started to all kind of bleed out back to LA. And as a way of protecting their jobs, they were like, if you want to film here, you have to use New York locals. Like, no more of this Hollywood invasion stuff. You're not taking our jobs. Yeah. That sounds about right for New York.
It seems, I mean, and I don't think it's wrong. No. They were just trying to look out for their own interests. I get it.
Yeah. It's just tricky. It's, the funny thing is at some point when I was in New York, or right before I went to New York, Houston Hill, who's a good friend of mine and who's also kind of helping produce the movie, he was like, well, what about, Canada, which I hear a lot just because it's so much cheaper to shoot in Canada. Mm-hmm. And, it's like during the past year, like I shot that pilot that also didn't get picked up in Toronto.
Damn.
And, it's fun working up there. I think a lot of people from our crew were the same people from Guillermo del Toro's crew. Because I guess Guillermo shoots all his stuff in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't know before I went up there. And I was actually kind of surprised. But then I was like, well, what about like England instead? So now I'm looking at...
Why don't you just shoot it on the moon, Chad?
Yeah, I know. Now I'm looking at changing the whole city from the original was Denver to Liverpool, and
now we'll have this Wicker Man kind of feel to it.
Northern Wales as the kind of forest area, because it's kind of like there's tons of incentives to shoot there. Basically, by shooting there, you get, if your budget is, let's say, $5 million, you're going to get, $1.5 million back. So it's essentially a $3.5 million movie instead.
Right. Yeah, you're getting a 30% boost.
It's pretty sizable, whereas if it's Colorado, you're going to get hardly anything back in it. So you're basically spending $5 million. So that's the plan now. So I was in New York just to kind of scout around the Adirondacks because I had never really driven up there. Mm-hmm. lots of Confederate flags up there now. Turns out.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I was like, don't you know you're in Yankee territory?
Yeah, this is
like
wacky.
I guess they're trying to bleed it from the inside out. I don't know. But when you get out there, I have a new respect for location scouts because you're driving around and it's like I can't visit any of the locations because they're all on private land.
Yeah, sure.
And it's America, so you could get shot somewhere, like if you're, just running around.
And if they have a Confederate flag hanging up, you're asking for trouble already.
I passed one place that was like, I dare you to come knock on my door. They had like a big sign up, next to 15 Trump flags. And I'm like, yeah, not going over there.
And you're like, well, that guy dared me. I can't pass up a dare.
It's so funny.
He called me yellow.
I've never seen that. I mean, I've seen some of it here and there, but not at that extreme level that I saw in upstate New York, which was kind of surprising. But anyway, then I went to Europe where you don't see any of that bullshit, and
you were tempted to stay.
No, you're like, everything seems so much smaller in America when you're outside of it. Looking back, it's just so funny, like the big deal that certain groups make of everything here in this country versus outside.
Right.
It's like you don't necessarily deal with any of that. You do, but it's like it's a bit more of a mixed melting pot that's been around for thousands of years, so they don't take as much insult.
Yeah, instead of dozens of years.
Yeah, dozens of years. Colorado, 9 Inch Nails, came back and went on a bike trip through Austria, a cameo of Slovakia for a day.
Okay.
That was interesting. And Germany, of course. It was great. I did something similar like 5 or 6 years ago in Germany, and it was wonderful.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
But it was well needed just because, like you, just working nonstop and not stopping and like enjoying life instead of just dying in a chair.
Yeah,
which is what we do.
When you're just in the middle of your workday and you just feel overwhelmed by the normal workload, and it seems like, oh my God, this is just going to go on every day until I die. It's time to take a break. There's no reason you should just force yourself to do it unless you're, really badly in need of the paycheck. Thankfully, I've saved up my pennies long enough I can afford to take a little more time off now.
Well, I was on a show when I was in London. I don't know if we talked. I guess we wouldn't have talked about it.
No,
maybe because
I don't think.
I couldn't really say. I still can't say the name, but I was on the show for a year, just in development, and then I left. I decided to leave the show because various reasons. Basically, it was going to take me out of the country for 15 months.
Oh,
and I wasn't necessarily super excited about that. I like leaving the country, but not for 15 months.
Right. Well, unless you do one of those ridiculous things where you're flying back every week or two.
Yeah. So, I'd probably be working on that right now if I hadn't left. But I did start up a little corporation finally to work as a vendor, and I did some VFX on just as an artist on both Angeline and
that series. Is that Hulu?
The Resort. No.
Oh, I've heard good things
Peacock.
about The Resort. Okay, Peacock.
Yeah, I did all 8 episodes of Peacock. I just jumped on as a VFX artist. Our good friend Brandon Flight, he had been working with me on Gaslit just as our in-house artist, and similar to you getting bumped up, there was an opportunity for him to leave us because they needed an on-set visual effects supervisor. So I really said, hey, why don't you take a look at Brandon? Because he was with us on Homecoming season 1, and they were willing enough to give him a shot. So he flew down to Puerto Rico and did all the on-set VFX supervision.
Great.
So that was kind of cool to see. Yeah, but then of course Gaslit, which I don't think was out yet last time we.
No. No,
now that's out.
Twinkle in your eye.
I hope somebody saw it because it was on Stars and not many people saw it, but turned out really good. Super happy about it. 95% of the VFX are good.
And the other 5 were not yours.
The other 5, no, I mean some of them are mine, but it's It's because it was, and I'm sure you saw this on your shows. There was so much production last year going on that a lot of our vendors, we by the time we got a locked edit, which usually is like 4 weeks after it's supposed to have been done. In our case, so it's like we can't really send visual effects out until we've got a lock because they could change.
Yeah, you know how many frames you have to deliver, etc.
And that seems to happen a lot on the shows I've been on, where it doesn't happen in time, and then we have to send out to the vendors like way after they're expecting it, and they just don't have time to turn something around. So we had a lot of people turn us down, and in the past, they would have said sure and figured it out. But now there's so many massive shows. Like there's 2 Star Trek shows going on right now. There's 15 Marvel shows, 3 Star Wars shows going on.
And it's been in the news lately how much the Marvel shows are demanding from VFX artists.
A huge amount.
So many revisions. I won't say what movie or who this guy is, but I recently met a guy at a party with work friends. He was an artist on some Marvel film, and he said he was working on just one shot, different versions of the same 4-second shot for 6 months. Every day for 6 months, he knew he was going in just to work on these 4 seconds. Over and over and over and over and over. And whoever it was just, they kept on kicking it back. And nobody could really explain what the problem was. So it's just no, we just need something different. Try something else. Oh, boy.
Well, yeah, that's bad.
That would make me insane.
I mean, I've been hypercritical of some of the shots that have come back to us from vendors sometimes. More so recently than in the past, because I think one of the problems the vendors are dealing with is their best artists are on the bigger shows because there's so much more required from those shots. And at some point, I noticed we were getting shots back from our vendor that were just sub-college level.
Just shat out. Here's version 0.5.
Just awful.
Yeah.
You get it back and you're like, this is...
You didn't even try.
I don't even know how to do what they did. And I would figure it out in a day and done a better job. But yeah,
and that's why I'll never be a VFX artist, because it's still basically magic to me.
I mean, it's becoming less and less magic as time goes on, thankfully, considering it's my job. I mean, the whole job of a supervisor is just to make sure you go in and give the post artists a fighting chance.
Right. Everything they should need to successfully complete the shot and make it not look sub-college level.
Showing up on set and being, that camera, I can paint it out, but it shouldn't be over the actor's face.
What do you mean? You guys aren't doing 3D?
Rebuild the face? Well,
you're not doing 3D scans of every actor's face who comes on the show?
Because I know that's happened specifically to our friend Teague.
Oh.
Who was told to remove a boom mic from the frame. Or not a boom mic. It was like a pole that was holding up a rock that was supposed to be floating.
Okay.
But the pole was stretched out across the actor's face. So,
well, it's okay.
You had to remove the pole and
shoot
rebuild.
A clean plate, then you just have to find a take from the clean shots. Then you can sort of comp that out.
But when it's across a moving object like someone's face,
right?
You can't really do a clean plate of someone's face. Well, you can, but it's not going to have motion.
It just would have been easier to shoot it without the rock and put that in instead of painting her face.
They should have done it from the opposite side of frame where there was nothing there.
That too.
Yes,
I don't know the particulars.
This is the point of a supervisor on set: you have somebody going, "No, don't do that."
You just smack them.
I do want to say, because I've noticed in the past year, just Twitter's just been brutal against VFX artists.
Oh yeah, when the She-Hulk trailer came out, everybody was just like, "What? This looks like she's made out of wax or something." Guys, do you have any idea what they did to make this happen? This is amazing that a TV show can even attempt something like this. Yeah,
on the TV schedule, I mean, it's like when we did Mr. Robot season 4, I was like, we're essentially making a high quality 13-hour movie in the same or less time as a movie would make something that's 90 minutes to 120 minutes. And to be able to output that high level of content for that amount of time is insane, especially because you're probably doing it on a much lower budget than a movie.
Well, yeah, the idea of TV as a sausage maker, where you just have to keep grinding out more episodes, more links of the sausage, that never entirely went away, but the expectations have grown exponentially over the last 30 years.
Yeah. The other thing that kind of irritates me, I've noticed, like, because there's a lot of posts about green screen and how some stuff doesn't look good. And one thing I noticed, like, especially after having done a few shows, you do run into a lot of, who was I talking to? Somebody yesterday we were talking about this, and a commercial came on, and it was just like clear as day, green screen. Mm-hmm. It was like two people standing way too brightly lit. Like, they're lit like the sun is supposed to be hitting them.
Yeah.
But there's the backdrop is, it's like some sunny California coast, and it's so dark by comparison.
Like
the foreground.
Compositing was just bad.
Well, you'd think that, but a lot of the times, one thing that happens a lot is we'll turn in a shot and we balanced it how it's supposed to be balanced. The background matches the foreground.
Yes.
In terms of
But
brightness.
color always has the mattes. So
color asks for the mattes, which is essentially a black and white image.
It's a cutout of the
visual
effect
of the foreground. So the foreground's cut out from the background, and then they dial down the background. So
just so that your attention is on the.
And what my friend said yesterday was like, 50% of the time DI, which is that process.
Digital intermediate.
Yeah, doing color breaks visual effects. And it usually has nothing to do with the visual effects artist because it's out of their hands at that point. I've had something similar where it's like, you turn in a shot and you've done the green screen work and you've optically made the background out of focus like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, because you're focused on something up close.
Yeah,
the background
and you can
falls
see
out.
depth. There's other points of focus where it's either less or more in focus. But then, you get a showrunner who comes back and says, I can't see anything in the background.
Yeah, why do you want to see the background?
So then they ask for it to be less, you get these
we want that deep focus.
Asks.
Like in Citizen Kane.
I want to see everything in the background. So you do that, and then it just optically breaks the image. You're like, this does not look right. But then they're like, I don't care.
Because there's not
That's
a camera.
Just what I want.
Yeah, in that shot, there's not a camera that could focus on both the foreground and the background.
I just watched that the ILM documentary.
Oh, I've heard good things. Haven't seen
it. But there's one clip of George Lucas basically asking this of someone in visual effects. Like, I know it hurt you to do what I'm asking, but I want you to do it anyway, and you'll be okay with it. Essentially, is what he says.
Then I will keep paying you.
I will keep paying you. Yeah, so that's, I don't know, my mini rant, I guess, on the whole.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of times as an editor and an assistant, we get the notes like, oh no, you got to change this element of the shot, or it should make this sound instead. And I used to react to that, well, that's not how it really is. That's not what it really looks like, what it really sounds like. And then I just have to step back and go, we're not trying to represent reality. We're just trying to make this show. And in this show, that's the sound that door makes, even though it's a completely wrong kind of door to make that sound.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say, depending on the quality of the show you're working on, you're willing to do more or less. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think when I was doing the Fincher stuff, it was much more intense in terms of like,
yeah, I heard some.
We're going to redo some of this stuff, but I think about it now, and it's like we had a pretty cushy schedule. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, we worked. So there was like 2 or 3 weeks at the end of every show where it was insane.
You're there every weekend, yeah.
I don't think we were allowed to work weekends there, to be honest. I think they just said no. Like, worked long nights.
Until midnight Saturday.
On Gone Girl, I remember, handed in my final shots. It was like 2 a.m. I go home. No, it wasn't 2 a.m. What am I saying? It was 2 a.m. when I finished my final shots. I got a call like saying, our vendor failed on this one thing. Can you add a anamorphic flare to this shot? Mm-hmm. because we have to send out our theatrical prints tomorrow, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
So I stayed up, figured it out. I hadn't done that before at that point in my career. Stayed up, went home at like 7 in the morning, which was one of the later nights I think I had there, if not the latest night.
That's pretty late.
That's pretty late.
Well,
I've
when did
had
you start?
much later on Homecoming season 1.
Oh, boy.
Where I barely slept for like 4 days. Anyway, I went home, crashed in my bed, literally closed my eyes, phone rings. And I answer and they're like, so we have one other thing we need you to do really quick. So I went back to the office. I literally was so exhausted. And like finished this last shot and then sent it off. And yeah, that was the toughest it ever got there. But I mean, that movie's like one of the favorite things I've ever worked on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're willing to go farther for projects you think are meaningful. You can appreciate what they're doing, and that's, I guess, up to you. If I was in your shoes, I probably would have been like, if I try to drive back there, I could crash the car. Yeah, you're gonna have to find somebody else.
I believe me, I was like 12 Red Bulls in at that point. I'm sure I was vibrating from the inside.
Yeah,
and I was still, early 30s. I could still handle it, I think.
Yeah, I guess that's all part of it.
Nowadays, I don't have the patience for that kind of shit. Right. Homecoming, I did, because it was my first like supervising job, there was definitely some things I could have done better and saved myself the grief. Mm-hmm. So I more or less did myself in on that one where I had to stay up all night, fixing things. And
yeah, like the things where I've been allowed to edit on these shows, I do work myself harder because I don't want to blow it. It's kind of like, hey, I finally got the chair.
Yeah, right.
Don't let him kick you out of this chair again. Don't give him a reason. But if I started on a show as an editor and that was the job, I would not be at the computer till 10 p.m. every night. Just can't do it.
Yeah.
No energy and no desire.
Too old for this shit, man.
I'm too old for this shit. If I could retire tomorrow, I would.
I think you're in better shape now than when we started the podcast.
You mean physically?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think.
I don't think I was
because you weren't. Well, you were working out back then, but at least I think that's the one thing I noticed. The people who last a long time in this industry also eventually figure out, oh yeah, I've got to work out.
Well, yeah,
I'll probably just die young.
Keeping your physical self in some kind of shape is as important as your mental, psychological, emotional self.
Yeah.
I can't say I'm too great with those.
So how do you feel, Mark?
I'll get back to you. I'll let you know when I'm ready to work again, sir.
So I believe it's a movie podcast that we're doing.
Yeah, this isn't just a bunch of bullshit about what we've been up to for the last year.
You brought a movie.
I brought a movie. Actually, I didn't. I brought up a movie.
You asked me.
You own this movie, and you never watched it, which is kind of perfect because it means you wanted to see it.
I did want to see it, yeah. And I've seen. Is it? Well, okay. I'll let you finish your thought before
I didn't have much of a thought. The movie is Hereditary, which is, I think, from 2018 now, 4 years old.
And the thing I was going to ask is the director Ari Aster or Ari Aster?
I think it's Ari.
Okay.
Ari Aster. He also directed Midsummer,
which I've seen.
Okay.
So I have seen that.
What did you think of Midsummer?
Hit and miss. I really appreciated the vibe that he did.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that.
It's pretty clear that he's got vision. He does, because when we were loading up the DVD, the Blu-ray, obviously we saw the trailer for The Witch, which? Robert Eggers, not Edgars, kind of has a similar vibe from what I could tell from Midsummer, just in terms of their approach is very like artistic and very like detail oriented as opposed to just a lot of these other horror films.
Very A24. Let's put it that way.
That's a good way of putting it.
They are extremely A24 filmmakers.
Yes.
And that is not a slight. I like that vibe generally.
Yeah.
But they definitely, They choose that kind of movie to release. Was Men was A24 as well, and
which I haven't seen.
Oh, okay.
Or Green Knight.
I loved Green Knight.
Really?
God damn. That'll be the next one.
Well, I've seen
from
it,
me.
But
you've seen it.
I've seen it. What I could actually see that wasn't so dark, I couldn't.
You didn't see it in a theater?
I did, yeah.
Then what theater did you see this in?
We saw it at the Lemley NoHo. It was still really dark, though. I mean, I could see everything. I could see. But had I watched this at home, I'm not sure I would have been able to see much.
Well, then you just turn the brightness all the way up.
There were some cool things to it, but I guess that story to me didn't really click. Which I know there's people who love that tale.
I didn't know anything about the tale.
Oh, really?
So I don't know how authentic it is or how true it is to the original story. I love the movie for the movie. It surprised me. I kind of knew in the long run the knight that story is about. He ends up being a knight of the Round Table, so I knew he couldn't die at the end. Yeah. Sort of like seeing a Bond movie. He's gonna.
Well, shit, that's a spoiler.
No, I liked it was like a grown-up fairy tale.
Yeah.
I think it was so simple that it's one of those things that could cross cultures and ages, and it just fit. It just felt right to me.
Interesting.
Except for the jerk-off scene.
I was about to say,
it's good for all audiences.
How do you
take
fit
that out?
The ages thing in there? Children are going to watch this movie?
It's a little slow for kids, but there could be some kids who really get into it, or who like the kind of creepy feeling that goes throughout. Like the middle section when he gets tied up in the field, or in the woods or whatever, and then he kind of sees his own.
Is that when he starts seeing giants and stuff?
No,
we're really getting deep in Green Knight here.
Anyway, we can keep it to Hereditary, the movie.
Yes.
That I wanted.
I don't know why I never saw this. I had a group of friends who went and saw it, and I could have seen it then. But I mean, I've just always been I felt like I bunched this movie in with every other horror film that was coming out at the time, which I feel like they were doing all those movies with. I think it starts with a C. It's like the woman and the man who like go and do like ghost investigations and shit.
Ghost. The Conjuring?
Yeah. Like that whole series.
You thought this was like that?
Well, it wasn't that I thought it was the same as that. I just felt like there'd been too much.
Okay.
I was kind of like overseeing all these 25 movies that came out around that time.
Okay.
It felt like, something that was...
That's funny. That would be funny if Hereditary was in the Conjuring universe and was like a sequel to The Nun or something.
Well, honestly, I've never really... I feel like one of the tropes that goes into these movies is there's always a deranged kid or something.
Well, are you familiar with the poster for Hereditary?
Yes.
Okay, so you've seen Toni Collette with the kid. And of course, that what does that make you think? The deranged kid trope.
Right, and it's, at least from what I've gathered in the movie, it's kind of a reversal of that, but...
Okay, come on.
God, who was you? Pump the brakes. Yeah, I get it. But, I mean, I think, like, it is one of those movies you kind of hear enough at some point. I kind of have a feeling I know what the movie's about, but...
Well, that was my next question, was it's kind of entered the pop culture lexicon a little bit. Like, everybody has seen this creepy, deranged kid from the poster, and they have
Toni
an idea.
Collette always plays these creepy, deranged people, so it's not really a stretch for me to, I guess... I still have no idea what happens in this movie. Right. Really.
Okay. Well, what do you think? Just guess. Guess what the plot might be. What do you think it's about? Not thematically. You could talk
just
about
based on Hereditary, so it's something about family lines. Mm-hmm. Do I have to guess before the audience has seen the movie? What if they haven't seen it?
They can guess on their own. Audience, you should be guessing.
If I had to
just
guess,
talk to yourself right now.
It's a mother trying to get her child in line with the history of the family, and by doing some weird shit.
Okay. Well, I will say this is definitely like the peak of elevated horror. It is kind of...
I've heard people scared, like, shit themselves.
Oh, it's pretty scary, man.
Great.
At least it was for me. This is like the third time I'm seeing it.
Great.
Maybe the fourth.
So you just get to sit over there with a camera aimed at me.
I'll just be grinning the whole time waiting for you to jump.
God damn it.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we can talk more about what elevated horror is after the movie. If you're pro elevated horror or anti, there are many opinions online. But it's been 45 minutes, so let's just start the movie. Let's roll.
Fine. Well, I mean, people haven't heard our voices in a while, so...
my lovely Chicago dulcet tones.
My droning monotone voice. Lulling you to sleep.
Haven't I mentioned on this very show before, no one should ever put a microphone in front of me. There's no reason to ever listen to me.
Well, I don't think... Do people even listen to podcasts anymore? I mean, nobody works at work anymore.
I listen to podcasts when I exercise, when I'm weight training.
Do you weight train for an hour and a half?
More like 45 minutes to an hour.
So we've already fucked that one.
But I play podcasts at like triple speed, so I can fit in more every day.
What? Are you sure? Are you serious?
No, not triple speed, but I do speed them up a little bit.
You're like, why do these actors sound so weird?
Now when I hear people talking at a normal rate, I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah.
This is too slow. What's wrong with it? They have like a learning disability?
All right, let's do this.
Let's roll it.
Come on, Peter. It's your suit.
It's heartening to see so many strange new faces here today. I know my mom would be very touched and probably a little suspicious. My mother was a very secretive and private woman. It's Grandma. You know you were her favorite, right? Even when you were a little baby, she wouldn't let me feed you because she needed to feed you. She was a very difficult woman, which maybe explains me.
I recognize you from your mother.
What?
Sometimes I swear I can feel them in the room.
Oh my God, what's that?
She isn't gone.
She had private rituals, private friends.
Who's gonna take care of me?
You don't think I'm gonna take care of you?
But when you die...
And she wasn't altogether there. At the end.
I don't like this. Dad, I don't like this.
What's happening? Peter! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Please stop! Mom, what's happening? Make it stop! Make it stop!
I just don't want to put any more stress on my family.
Good grief.
I guess that's a fairly common reaction to that movie.
Well, I will say it was essentially nothing like I expected, which is good.
Yeah, that is good. Because it's good when a movie doesn't give it all away in the trailer or even the poster, like Hudsucker Proxy, and it hits you with something like completely out of left field, but still it fits in the movie. It's part of the story.
You may have to explain a few things that happened in the movie to me.
Yeah, I can do that.
I mean, I got a sense that...
Well, what do you think happened? Just from a plot perspective.
I'm trying to sort that out, actually. Like, at first... God, I don't know. I'm trying to put it into words. I mean, I guess... So, the grandmother was involved in this basically satanic cult, essentially, that was trying to bring back Pema, one of the, 8 or 4?
One of the 8 kings of hell.
One of the 8 kings of hell.
I never heard of him before this movie. But.
I guess what I didn't register or completely understand was the process of it transferring from host to host. So I guess it was in her, Toni Collette.
Well, yeah. If you go back like further in the story, Toni Collette has 2 kids. There's Charlie and Peter. Charlie is the little girl. She says when explaining like all the problems she's had with her mom, the woman whose death opens the movie, she says she didn't let her handle Peter at all. But over the years, they tried to like reconnect, so she let the grandma
have Charlie.
Have Charlie. She says have Charlie.
She said,
but that sort of means like more time with her.
She said she wished I was a boy.
Yeah, all this stuff, and like Charlie doesn't know what's going on. But basically, whatever rituals this cult performed, they didn't have a chance to do it to Peter. They only had Charlie. But because Paimon prefers a male body, they go to all these lengths to give him one, to force him into Peter, essentially, years later. And the book says that to the conjurer go riches or something like that. And it's like, is it really... They're just doing this to become famous and wealthy, and
I know. I was like,
I'm not sure how that's going to work, because look at Peter's face at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
After this woman has said, like, you are Paimon, one of the 8 kings of hell, and he is kind of doing a Charlie impression, which is just this vacant stare. Yeah. I don't see how this person is going to help you get rich and powerful in the world. But hey, they don't get into that.
I mean, I think asking someone who's, in charge of hell, so to speak, for some benefit to your own life. I mean, I guess, yeah, it's like part of the 7 deadly sins is, wanting shit. Yeah, agreed. But, I mean, so I guess in that sense, sure, okay. But, I mean, he's the trickster. He's going to fuck you over.
When someone is called the god of mischief or the demon or whatever his title is, you don't want to be making deals with that creature.
No, he's just going to turn around.
Because we don't know what the rules are, really. Yeah. Obviously, all the magic shit they've done, it all paid off in this one night of like totally macabre, horrific nightmare fuel. But so, I don't understand how it's going to help them.
Who were all the naked men at the end of the movie? Was that his previous hosts, or was that just...
Those are all just cult members.
Just cult members? Okay.
Yeah. They're all over the house, apparently.
Got it.
They're in the closets.
Which is why they were looking at him, staring and smiling early on in the movie.
They're his servants, essentially.
So obviously they had it in their mind well in advance that they wanted
Well, yeah. Well,
Peter.
Since I've seen this a few times, I can see more of the clues. But like the first naked man we see in the house, that's the same creepy smiling dude from the funeral.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the casting notice went out looking for a guy with a creepy smile.
Yeah.
Because that's his like identifying attribute.
From Nudist Colony. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's like the plot. This was, I think, my favorite movie of 2018. Toni Collette should she should have won the Oscar, but she wasn't even nominated.
Yeah.
It wasn't even on the short list as far as I know.
Never is.
And this was an incredible performance from her.
Yeah.
It's
not easy what she had to do.
No. Like, there's so much mania and genuine emotion and just, like, she's desperate. She's at the end of her rope. There's so much stuff. She is credibly playing someone who appears from the outside to be suffering from severe mental illness.
Yeah.
But we have been with her. We know the whole story, so we know where she's coming from, and it works for both perspectives. And Gabriel Byrne this
must
time
be one of the best actresses out there, to be honest. Like, if not the best. Like, to be honest, like,
I can't imagine anybody else
the performances she's done. Have you seen The Staircase?
No, I haven't.
You might actually really enjoy that.
I've seen the documentary. I don't feel like I need to watch the scripted version.
That's true. I haven't seen the documentary, but I don't know. The scripted version's interesting because they
don't know what the real
because the documentarians who did the I almost called it something else. The documentary. Like, they're characters in the show.
Okay.
So it's like you can see them making the documentary
right
in this, non-fiction sort of setting.
And it gives it a new...
kind of got that whole, was it Rashomon that shows the different perspectives?
Yes.
Different ideas of what's going on. It was fascinating. Plus her performance is, fantastic, as is Colin Firth on that. But it's worth watching if you have the time.
If I got the time. I guess it's on my list, but it's way down the list right now.
Yeah.
I haven't even watched The Sopranos.
Yeah, I haven't. I have not either.
But the thing that really got me about this movie when I first saw it is for basically the first 2/3 of the movie, it really could just be about a woman losing her mind.
Well, and dealing with loss and grief.
Yes. And the title of the movie, Hereditary, and the poster with the mom and the daughter, it kind of plants this idea like this is just going to be her dealing with what she thinks she got from her mom and is worried about passing on to her daughter.
Yeah.
But it's not that.
Well, I guess that's one of my questions then is, why is it called Hereditary if it's not about that? Because it doesn't really tie into how it ultimately ends up.
All the possession stuff.
Yeah.
No, not really. But I think it still puts us in Toni Collette's frame of mind. It helps us see everything that's happening from her point of view. I mean, when she goes to this grief counseling group, and she gives the whole rundown of the various mental illnesses her family has dealt with. Her mother and father both dealt with like schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder, and then her brother killed himself, and then all this horrible shit happens in this movie. She's already seeming like she is on the edge. So I started watching the movie going like, well, is she already kind of dealing with some of the early onset dementia or whatever? And then these horrible things, her daughter is killed and in this accident, and now her son is dealing with severe depression. And she seems to be going through all these different phases where it feels I'm no psychologist by any means, but it's like manic depression where she can't get over the death of her daughter, so she's turning to her friend who knows a psychic and is like getting the whole family involved in her weird supernatural hobbies and shit. And it just feels every member of the household, their performances are so on point for how a family would actually deal with their crazy mom or wife. Where it's like you just kind of go along with the delusions to get it over with, but then at the end of the day, like Gabriel Byrne says, I'm not going to do this anymore. Right. He reaches his breaking point. And
it took him long enough. To be honest, I don't think I would have stuck around that long.
Yeah, I mean, that day when he brings home Peter from school and he's busted his own face up on his desk and stuff, he finally breaks down crying in the car. We hadn't seen him really be all that emotional through the whole movie, but this is enough. It is affecting everyone. His son now, it's too much. He's got to put his foot down, and that's when the book sets him on fire.
I didn't quite understand why the book set him on fire.
Just to fuck with him, I think.
It's just more of that trickery.
Yeah.
Because she expected herself to go up in flames.
Right. She thought she was making this noble sacrifice.
Yeah.
And then she took it through it. I don't know. Maybe because he was the last one to really be holding it. She took it and just kind of tossed it into the fire right away. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know how they can justify it, but it works.
Yeah. I guess just because he was in that space, it really didn't matter. If it was going to burn somebody, it's a trick anyway, so it can burn anyone, really. Mm-hmm. That's my guess.
The first time, she was the only one in the room, but maybe with both of them, because they were going to be using her dead body for this ritual later.
So whose body is upstairs?
In the attic?
Yeah.
That was her mom.
You think so? Or
yeah,
think
for sure.
The daughter?
No. Because the cemetery says, they call and say,
Yeah.
oh
the
yeah,
body's
it's a week
missing.
later, that old lady's body's gone. The daughter's body never disappeared.
But there was that
Plus,
comment,
it was obviously an adult body.
there was
It
that
like,
comment at some point that it's been months after the mother's passed.
Mm-hmm.
Could it have been the daughter? I mean,
No, I
because
don't
even
think
she
that's,
said, I don't know who it is.
But it was, I mean, it was not a child's body. They showed the casket at Charlie's funeral.
Yeah.
And it was like a half size. It was a kid's casket, and that was not a kid's body up in the attic. When they, like in the treehouse, they pan from left to right. They're the same size, roughly. They're both adult bodies.
The mother seemed just so much more, like, just kind of tall and slender. But Charlie was a little bit more stocky and
I'm fairly sure the intention is that it's the grandma's body.
yeah.
But what do you think about the whole dollhouse theme running through this thing? Because the first shot of the movie, we push into one of the dollhouses Annie's building, and then it becomes the movie. Like, we are in the dollhouse.
I don't know that I mean, obviously he's big on symbolism, and there's that tilt shift shot, like exterior
of the house. Yeah,
shot
where
at the end, which kind of
tilt shift is a photographic method.
it just kind of makes things look miniaturized because you're changing the focus.
Because even though you're
depth.
using like a wide lens, you're outside and looking at a full size building. By throwing the background and the foreground into way out of focus, it makes it look small. Like
kind of like what we were talking
microscope.
about before with things that are not optically normal.
Right.
You're making it look off somehow, and that's kind of
he
was showing that it looks like a miniature.
Right. A sequence in The Social Network where they do the row competition. That's all done in tilt shift, and they all look like tiny little miniature people.
Dots. It was I mean, I think I appreciate it from the point of view of he's just trying to show that we're seeing into a little window of their lives, essentially.
I think there's
story,
more,
but
I think there's more to it than that. I'm getting well, this kind of goes into, this is why this is such a great movie, because like the presentation, the style of the movie, the way it's shot and everything, it all ties back into character for me. Mm-hmm. Toni Collette, she's this artist who works on dollhouses, and through the whole movie, her art dealers or what have you, her managers are constantly like, we'd like to see some new work. You have an opening in a couple weeks.
Yeah. I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. But we still need to have something.
Yeah.
The things that she is making appear to be little vignettes from her own life.
Yeah.
Or people she knows, at least. She makes a little diorama of her daughter's head getting smashed off of an electrical pole out in the desert.
Yeah.
And then there are all these little things that are almost alluded to in Toni Collette's dialogue. The way she describes her mother sinking her claws into Charlie. Mm-hmm. Then we get a little glimpse at a diorama of Annie with Charlie in the hospital bed, apparently like milking or, like feeding Charlie. Mm-hmm. And the grandma is next to the bed with her own breast out, going like, no, let me do it. That's crazy. That's fucking insanity.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of overbearing mother she has been dealing with her whole life.
Yeah.
So, by making these little dioramas and putting it out in the open, she claims that it's a neutral view of all of these things. But she's kind of trying to take control. Mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. She's trying to either step away from it so it's not her experience anymore. It's just this thing.
Well, it's a coping mechanism, but it's also batshit insane.
It's totally insane.
Watching it, people, and you can see Gabriel Byrne's expression on his face when he comes in and he sees she's making this diorama
of the head. Yeah.
And where her daughter lost her head, and it's like, that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, it's coping. It's a method of control, taking control over those things. So I think the dollhouse thing when we, in that first shot, we push in and this whole house is a dollhouse, not literally, but metaphorically, they're the ones being controlled. It's all like from the first frame, they're inside this managed dollhouse. Everything that happens is being done to them.
Let me ask you this. So the sound the daughter makes.
What
what is that?
I don't know. I think
for sure I missed something where they kind of explained.
There's no real explanation. I think it was because she's a weird little kid, and I think that having the, I don't know, like this spark of Payman or whatever in her has made her a little bit crazy. She cuts the heads off of birds and makes dolls out of them.
Yeah.
I think the kid, she doesn't know how to express what she's feeling or anything, but she's just a little off. Like maybe some people would go like, is that kid autistic? She just has weird hobbies. She has no friends.
Yeah.
She's allergic to nuts. So it's like I don't know, reason 1231 why I don't have kids. I don't want one that comes out like Charlie.
That's not very nice.
I just know I would be the one who has a kid who's allergic to 99% of all food ingredients. Yeah. Allergic to sun, allergic to water.
Constantly looking over their shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, having seen this in Midsummer now, it's like.
And that one.
He's got a thing for existing, I'm guessing Payma's an existing.
I think it's a quote unquote
and obviously
real
Midsummer
thing.
is
based on an
actual like thing as well. Mm-hmm. I guess that's why I'm kind of surprised like he didn't do a movie like The Witch, and that's why I get them kind of mixed up. Obviously, the Northman was very different than any of these because it's much more.
It was just a brutal Shakespearean family drama. Yeah,
but it felt nothing like The Witch.
Right.
Or The Vitch, as the poster makes it look like. But it's like very stylized. I think I said early on in Hereditary that this felt much more composed.
You said precise.
Precise. I mean, in terms of, this felt like a well-oiled, and despite being confusing, which was fine, a well-oiled script. Mm-hmm. Like someone who had gone through it many times. It didn't necessarily have to make sense on the first pass for someone watching it, but it's all there.
Yeah.
I get the sense if I go back and watch this again, it would make a whole lot more sense.
Definitely.
It's whereas Midsummer kind of felt like maybe it needed another draft or two to kind of push it to a certain spot.
I think Midsummer is still very good, but I think it kind of falls into a lot of horror tropes that it doesn't really need to. Like, I don't know, the students who are pushing the locals too hard and trying to steal their secret information, and they get murdered by the slasher in town. And that was much more of like a slasher feeling movie through half of it. But they're both about people dealing with trauma in their lives, just different kinds. Like that was Florence Pugh in Midsummer, dealing with her.
Yeah, her character was really interesting, and just dealing with.
Yeah, that was like her sister commits suicide and murders her parents, and she just didn't live there at the time, I think. And this is about Toni Collette, who has had this absolute motherfucker of a mom her whole life, and it ends up being just a pawn in her dead mother's plans to get riches and what have you from this demon king. It just doesn't seem fair.
The one thing I will say, I haven't seen the director's cut of Midsummer.
Me neither. I didn't know there was one.
Apparently it's like much longer. And it made me feel like, oh, maybe there's some stuff there that when I was watching Midsummer, I felt like they kind of glossed over a few pretty big things, especially when like all the kids that go on that trip, some of them just go walk off into the woods one time and you expect to see them again. And
right.
No, you just don't ever see them. They're just dead, but you
Yeah.
don't really just learn why. And I get the feeling that
turns into a thing.
in
Like the villagers are going like, oh yeah, they hung out with this person. They decided to go back to town. And that's just one of those horror tropes. Like, I'll be right back.
But I felt
gonna be back.
I felt like it would have been explained, and maybe it is in the director's cut.
Maybe better.
Where they just kind of showed. I think they probably got A24, and A24 was like, look,
this is too long.
Too long. Trim it down, because I think the director's cut's like 3 hours long.
I believe it. Yeah.
So I do need to see that, but I don't think it's on Blu-ray. I don't think.
But I still think that could be good as like in this movie, we're not sure if the movie is about mental illness or actual possessions and hauntings and stuff.
Right.
And in that case, in Midsummer, if we just never, like, maybe the townspeople are telling the truth. We don't know.
Right.
Maybe everybody's just a little bit crazy and misunderstanding, and it's like a conflict of cultures. And
that is that tough line to cross.
I think
do you want it to be like, or pretty early on in this movie though, it's pretty clear it's really happening. But it could be in Toni and Colette's head at some points.
At some points, but like even the whole scene with the chalkboard where Joan has her grandson writing
very
messages.
Like blasé too. It's like, holy shit, this fucking thing is happening, and she's so like, oh, just sit down, it'll just happen, blah blah blah, and then it happens, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I love it when Toni Collette goes, okay, stop, we can stop now, and she goes, what? What do you mean stop? We're not stopping. This is a miracle.
Yeah.
Well, I know I mentioned earlier the concept of elevated horror as opposed to like your classic horror movies, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, where it's just kind of like the monster is the monster. They're very basic. Dracula, Frankenstein, those kinds of horror movies, where it's a story mainly about characters overcoming whatever creature is trying to kill them.
Yeah.
And elevated horror is kind of taking those ideas, but making it all kind of the joke is like, oh yeah, it's a werewolf movie, but it's really about someone fighting their alcoholic urges or something like that.
But like It Follows is about STDs.
Right, yeah. Where there's always an intended other thing that it's really about. The monster is just standing in for this idea. And I've seen a lot of criticism for that. Some people just love the old school horror, but you could even say
even old school horror
Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, that's the argument, is that the older horror movies, they're made with such simple concepts that you can put in anything you want. You can make those movies mean a lot of different things.
Sure.
But a movie like Men, that's the one people were talking about.
Which I
You haven't seen, so I won't spoil or anything, but the movie Men is about one thing. It is not open to interpretation. It is about one thing. And if you disagree, you're wrong. And that is the filmmaker's intention. And that is what A24 makes a lot of, I think.
Okay.
I mean, even I think the earlier examples of elevated horror were a lot of pseudo post-apocalyptic, like it's a story about people just trying to survive and after some big event. And it turns out mankind is the real monster.
Right.
Like, we never see a fucking monster in the movie. It's only people who are hurting each other. Ooh, what a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it's really cheesy and dumb. But in this case, just because it operates so well as a movie about going through like a mental health crisis, or a series of them, and grief and dealing with that, and how like she just throws herself back into her work on the same day she buries her mother, and she's not sure if she's grieving correctly, and it's like a lot of us
am I
have
supposed to cry? Or?
Yeah, shouldn't I feel sadder?
Yeah.
And it's like she's hated her mom most of her life.
Yeah.
She should feel however she feels. So it's firing on all cylinders. I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's super creepy and scary in the last act. You didn't even see some of the shadow figures at first.
The first one comes so early in the movie, it kind of catches you off guard.
Which one is that?
That's where like the mother's just standing.
Oh yeah, when she turns the lights off.
Yeah.
Or she's
And it really doesn't happen again for quite a while, which was interesting.
And that's another thing. Like, did she really see a ghost, or is she just seeing?
No, I'm pretty sure it was her mother.
I don't know about that now.
Just, sitting there watching her sleep.
Yeah, that was another one of the dioramas, right? Her imposing figure, this little doll standing in the doorway while she's just in bed with the baby.
God. I mean, that's pretty
super fucked up shit.
Yeah. There's I feel like there's been a couple movies. I'm trying to think what else falls in line with this kind of a vibe. There's been more and more, I feel like, lately.
Yeah, because this one had a lot of different effects going on, not just the dollhouse shot at the opening, but there's people on fire, there's all kinds of blue lighting, strobes zooming around the room. Mm-hmm. And that was another thing, first time I saw this. What did you think that was the first time you saw it? That was when Charlie was building her bird head doll, and then the room kind of like had this blue light flash through
it. I mean, I just got it that it was the presence of a spirit passing through the room.
I don't know. I guess it's because I've seen so many ghost movies. I was hopeful that it was some sort of good force. It was Ben Kenobi trying to save these people. Turns out, no, it's Payman.
Yeah, just
directing them where to look and where to walk.
What it was is because obviously you see him enter the body of Peter at the end.
Yeah.
What did it take for that to happen? Do you think Peter died?
Yeah. I think that, yeah. When he threw himself out the window. But
and he wasn't able to enter his body any other way?
Well, the book, this time I noticed the book, some of the highlighted text, it says like, Paimon will inhabit the weakest body available at the time.
Got it.
So but even if he was, I don't know, because he was unconscious earlier in the day from like medication.
Yeah.
But I always took it as he died. He must have hit his head or something. But there has, for like weeks now, been this campaign from this cult to drive him insane, sort of.
Yeah.
Like they're shouting at him at school. He's seeing weird
trying to get
reflections.
him to a place where he can be easily.
He got sort of possessed at the school, and that's what smashed his face into the desk.
Well, I guess that's what I was wondering is like, he smashed his face into his desk and that knocked him out, I guess.
Well, it didn't knock him.
He wasn't like Payma knocked Payma out of the body, so to speak. So it wasn't really super clear in that regard, but
I guess I'm not super clear on that either. You think it was Peter smashing his own head, not Payman doing that to Peter?
No, I got the feeling that it was a evil spirit like doing it to
smashing
Peter.
the head.
Yeah,
okay.
Like Peter wasn't doing it. Just the way his hand flew up.
Well, that part,
like
sure.
Kind of
and then
crippled.
His face was all puffy, like he was having an allergic reaction, like Charlie to the nuts in her dying moments. And also when Annie is possessed momentarily by Charlie, she has that wheezy breath.
Well, I thought it was his sister like messing with him the whole time. Like, to be honest, before they introduced the idea of Payma, I thought it was his sister like
getting revenge,
get revenge.
Or
something.
Yeah, I had that thought initially too.
Like when they do the seance, what do you think it was? Payma?
No, that seemed to be genuinely Charlie. It was like her voice, and she seemed to be like actually panicking, like what's going on?
Yeah.
She was just as lost as anybody. And that's why it's so hilarious that they had to reinstall Charlie's soul into Peter's body because she was the vehicle for Payman, because she doesn't have any clue.
Yeah, what's going on?
What's going on, how to do anything. She was 13 years old.
Yeah.
But
didn't want to go to a party where her brother's trying to get laid.
We're going to have to wait until the sequel Hereditary comes out.
Hereditaries. Yeah, very good movie. I'll be curious Yeah, I'll be, after sitting on it for a while, I'll be curious if I want to see it again.
Mm-hmm. It's I mean, shit. Just a close up of Charlie's head. I did not expect that.
Gnarly.
I did not
you
expect that in a
the
theater
kid to be
20 feet high.
You expect the kid to be
fucked up, but not headless.
Well, I thought, you expect the movie to be around the kid, like we were talking about earlier.
Right, yeah. All the trailer
within,
and the poster all look very creepy kid-centric.
Yeah. And yet, fun fact, I actually had a nightmare when I was like 5 years old of something similar. Like driving down the road and, get decapitated by like sticking your head out the window, which is what happens to Charlie in this movie. Yeah, not a good way to go.
No, quick though. She was suffering from anaphylactic shock at the same time, though. That's not cool.
It's a double whammy, literally.
I do really like how they show Peter's de-evolution at school. He seems like normal. He's just a kid who likes to smoke pot.
Yeah.
He gets invited to parties, and the night of the parties when everything goes bad, and then I don't know, shit. If you were half responsible for some accident like that, how would you even go back to?
Well, I expected him to kill himself most of the time.
Yeah, I was waiting for it, really. But then I don't know. He's not doing well in class. He can't focus on the teacher. Like the camera won't focus on the class. He's hanging out under the bleachers, smoking more pot, and then that's when he has a weird little coughing fit, like a allergic thing, like Charlie. And then later he's eating lunch and he's all by himself at the table, and he's just a mess. He's constantly sweaty. He's got huge bags under his eyes. He's this whole thing has ruined his life. Totally ruined his life.
Oh yeah, I would imagine it would if you got your sister decapitated.
Yeah, and just that dinner scene halfway through the movie when they're just shouting at each other.
Yeah,
or it's mostly Annie shouting at him. I can't. I don't know how people who really go through this shit.
A lot of family drama going on.
Yeah, and that's
trauma.
Honestly, that's when I think the movie really excels. Is when it's about the human drama. And people
most
dealing
movies,
with these
I would
problems.
make that argument.
Sure, but then the fun stuff is when, we got Annie cutting off her own head with a chain or something, and she's flying around the house and pounding her head into the attic.
Flashbacks to Audition. That movie and the wire saw. Ugh.
That's all. It's all very good.
God. Yeah, I mean, there's some great imagery in this movie that you don't normally see. In other movies, typically, of this, because you get the feeling that this had a decent budget.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it didn't look like it took much to shoot, but as far as some of the imagery they did, it was pretty well achieved.
Mm-hmm.
Like the body floating up into the
treehouse,
the headless body floating up into the treehouse. That was really well done.
Yeah, I remember after that shot in the theater, I was like, where would the cable go? Because it's moving on an arc.
I was wondering that too, because they usually have to kind of run it into where they're going.
Yeah.
But since she goes up, like underneath something, up into something, it's kind of like, well, how did they, unless the cable's coming from inside the cabin itself.
Very dreamlike. Like there's nothing happening there except maybe some music. And wow. I'm glad you enjoyed
visual
it.
Effect.
No. They actually found a floating body.
Yeah, that's right.
Lots of balloons. That's how they did it.
Right. Yeah, totally enjoyed it.
Great. I hope everybody listening, if you haven't seen it, then we just ruined everything. But, go watch it. Form your own opinions on this.
Yeah.
And if you know anybody who's acting like Annie, call the police.
Yes, do it right away. Don't wait. Is that it?
I think that's it.
Hopefully we'll get to do this again sooner than later.
Yeah, I hope so.
Although every time you're unemployed, I feel like you're unemployed for like a week and then you get an offer.
I'm really trying not to do that this time. That's that's the problem. It's what I've been doing, and I'm just like, I'm going too hard. Going too constantly.
Sometimes you just got to slow down.
That's right.
Same here.
We'll find a few more movies to do over the next few months, at least, before I find another job.
Yeah. That's kind of, I mean, I'm waiting to see if I can do my movie. And if I don't have money as of November, I probably will go find more work.
God damn it. Money.
Money.
The root of all of our problems.
Sigh. All right.
We're out.
Till next time.
It's Dragon Wagon. If you are enjoying this podcast and other podcasts on the Dragon Wagon Radio Network, be sure to check out the Dragon Wagon Shop. Awesome t-shirts and mugs from your favorite shows so you can tout your podcast pride all while supporting your favorite podcast network. And make sure to check it often for new items and limited time designs. Shop now at dragonwagonradio.com/shop and get your dragon swag on.